attitudes. This is lesson 4. I have noticed just from doing counseling with married couples through the years that couples who have long-term chronic problems usually have them because of their attitudes toward one another. You know, our attitudes interpret messages from people that may not even be spoken. In fact, even if the correct words are used, our attitudes can interpret the message to reflect what we actually believe about the person. It's like the lens that we talked about earlier. If my lens toward you is such, is that you're not trustworthy, then it doesn't matter what you say. I believe you're not trustworthy, and I'm going to interpret you based upon my belief. So I think we tend to develop attitudes in 2 ways. One, I think our attitudes are developed organically. For example, if you were brought up in a family system where politicians were viewed as corrupt, untrustworthy, deceitful, then every time a politician shows up on the television screen, if he or she's being interviewed, somebody in the room is going to say, "Oh, he's lying. That's not true. That's what they all do. You can't trust a politician." And whether you know it or not, whether you realize it or not, as a child, you are absorbing that belief system, and you're going to grow up thinking that politicians can't be trusted. This is just an example of how our worldviews are developed passively. Like you're not intentionally deciding at some point as a child, "Oh, I think, I'm going to decide that politicians are not trustworthy." No, you're passively absorbing the belief because you live in that system, right? So that's one way that attitudes are developed, and we need to be aware of that. I think the second way that we develop attitudes is through our experiences. For example, if you married someone, you had every reason to trust that person. There was no reason for you to not trust that person. Yet, through experience, your spouse may have not followed through on what they said they would do. They weren't trustworthy. They weren't dependable. And you begin to develop this suspicion that they're not going to be trustworthy. And then if you're not careful, your suspicion turns into an expectation. And so now, through multiple experiences with your spouse, you begin to expect this person to not be truthful, to not be dependable. And as that continues, that expectation turns into a deep belief about the person, a judgment about the person. And so once your attitude is such that you believe the person you're married to is not trustworthy, like that person's going to lie to you, then even if the person tells the truth, you're not going to believe him or her because you have already prejudged that this person will not tell you the truth. It's not trustworthy. And so even when the person does the right thing, you're not going to be able to see it because the lens that you're seeing the person through is colored, right? And you're going to expect this person to be what they've always been. This is why in marriage counseling, sometimes you can't get out of the rut because you believe what you believe about your spouse, and regardless of what that other person does to change, you're not going to hear it. You're going to continue to see the person through that old lens. This is what makes chronic problems more difficult to solve. And so when you realize, oh wow, I am prejudging my spouse before he or she ever says anything, then you can see now that your prejudice, your belief about your spouse, has now become a problem and is maybe creating more problems than the original issue that you're trying to work through. In fact, your belief about the person may be impeding the process. And now we have to deal with, what do you actually believe? And is that actually true? It may be true, it may not be true, but your attitude needs to be examined so that you can determine, like, what is going on here. How about you? Have you developed certain attitudes, have you adopted attitudes from your family system that you're not even aware that you're prejudiced? You're not even aware that you view people a certain way because you just adopted it. It happened to you. You didn't actually embrace it. It happened to you, and it became part of how you saw the world. Or maybe you've had experiences in your life that have caused you to view certain people the way you do, or certain situations the way you do. What I'm saying is, those are real, those are powerful. And if we don't examine them, then we're going to have a hard time changing what those are. So can you identify an attitude in your own heart that you think, oh wow, where did that come from? Like, I wonder where I got that idea. And maybe you have a good reason for believing what you believe. Maybe you don't. What I'm suggesting is, let's bring that to the Lord. Let's ask Him, what is going on in my heart that causes me to interact with this specific person the way I do? Think about that.